So the hunter asked the sage why dreams appear to be outside. And this can apply to either our sleeping dreams or to our notion of an external world right now. So the sage has entered into a body. I'm suggesting for the time being that this is his own energy body, although it's described as somebody else's body. I suspect it doesn't really matter. It's of the nature of a dream anyway. The sage continued. In that dream world too, there were the sun, the mountains and the oceans, as also the gods and the demons and human beings. There were the cities and the forest, the time scales and the directions. In other words, time and space. That dream vision appeared to be permanent. It was as if it arose after the termination of my sleep. I asked myself, how is that I see this dream, though I am not asleep? After considerable inquiry, I realized this surely is the divine form of the truth concerning consciousness. Whatever that consciousness manifests in itself is known as the world. Wherever this seed of consciousness sees its own form, as it were, there and then it sees the world, without ever abandoning its own reality as the infinite consciousness. It's a bit like a lucid dream, isn't it? He knows he's dreaming, but it's still there. The world is still there. I have realized now that this world, which is said to be the dream object, is the perception of this infinite consciousness. It's only consciousness that's perceiving anything. But then it gets caught up in a notion of an individual, and then it's the individual that thinks it's experiencing something. The manifestation, the shining of this consciousness is called the waking world, and also the dream world. It is one consciousness. There is no division in it. Dream is dream in relation to the waking state, but a dream is waking state in relation to the dream itself. Dream is non-different from the waking state. Waking state itself is twofold. So this is one of the discriminations we make. We make a discrimination between reality and imagination. We say that imagination is unreal. But we make this discrimination also between waking and dreaming. And we assume that when we're awake, we're not dreaming. It's exactly the same mechanism. Our consciousness has created the notion of an external world, and we go along with it. You might say, well, in dreams lots of absurd things happen, which defy the laws of physics. That's not what's happening in the awake state. But we don't think of that when we're in the dream, do we? Whatever happens in the dream is perfectly natural. No matter how patently absurd it is, we go along with it. And if we're actually open to our own reality, our so-called waking reality, very little of it could be described as normal, as not completely outrageous. Because it's the reality that we're used to, it's the reality we accept, we go along with it. We go along with it. It's what we think is normal. Although, if you're a sensitive individual, your senses will be screaming inside saying, what is going on here? What is all this? But we have to ignore that feeling, don't we? And we have to get on with it. So dream is non-different from the waking state. And the waking state is twofold. It's twofold in that we divide it into two, into waking and dream. A person is but consciousness. Even if 100 bodies perish, consciousness does not perish. Consciousness is like space, but it exists as if it is the body. Even when we're dreaming, we have a body. that body has senses. If our eyes get covered up in a dream, we won't be able to see. How do the senses operate in our dream body? Is it the same way our senses work in our waking body? We might not think that that's the case, but if you look into it, if you inquire into it as directly as possible, you'll find it actually is the case. So this is consciousness, it's all consciousness. The infinite appears to be divided into infinite objects with and without form. This is because countless particles of experiences shine within the infinite consciousness. Countless particles of experiences. It's the stream of experiencing. When the jiva turns away from the experiencing of the external world and towards the inner world in the heart, then dream arises. When the jiva has externalized consciousness, there is the waking state. When the same jiva turns its gaze upon itself, dream arises. So this is when the jiva moves away from the world. This is the sensation you get when you're falling asleep. You leave everything behind and you sink into yourself. The jiva itself is spread out as the space, the earth, the wind, the mountains and the oceans, whether they are seen outside or inside. We have no trouble acknowledging that everything we experience in a dream is consciousness. But what we need to learn and accept is exactly the same thing within our waking state. It's all spread out. Who and what we are is all spread out there in front of us as the external world. When this truth is realized, one is freed from vasana, or mental conditioning. So instead of thinking of it as a world out there, everything that's going on is a reminder of our own nature as consciousness. It can start feeding into our own sense of being rather than depleting it, which is what the notion of an external world does. It depletes our own sense of being.